Well, ladies and gentlemen, at long last, the Microsoft Activision Blizzard saga has come to a close. That's right, Microsoft has officially closed the deal, and they now own Activision Blizzard King. And I want to go back for a minute to where it all started, January 2022, and then kind of roll up until this point and really what comes next, because there are a lot of questions as to the direction of Microsoft, how they're basically going to treat Activision, and what they could even do with maybe some past franchises. So if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe if new here to the Spawn Wave channel. Let's head over here. This was the original press release, January 18th, 2022. Microsoft to acquire Activision Blizzard to bring the joy of community of gaming to everyone across every device. I mean, it is incredible to think that it took, almost 2 years. What's that, like 20 months from when they first announced their intention to purchase Activision Blizzard for nearly $70 billion to it actually closing. And a lot of stuff happened throughout those 20 months. Obviously, there's a lot of hurdles that was placed in front of Microsoft to get the deal done that also led to a significant amount of transparency, more than we've ever really seen when it comes to games. I mean, down to emails back and forth between executives and some choice words that were shared, and apparently spots in the courtroom with Jim Ryan, and it was all over the place. But the circus has come to a close now, where we have this that was released by Phil Spencer. It was published over on Xbox Wire. They also sent out emails and stuff to press just to make sure everyone saw this. And they have a bit of a newer card here, by the way. The original one just had, you could see like Diablo, Overwatch, Candy Crush, StarCraft, World of Warcraft, Call of Duty. But on the newer one, they kind of mix in a few others, like Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2, Overwatch still in there, and Crash Bandicoot. And I assume they put some stuff in front of people that would be a bit more short-term, that would be appearing in front of them, maybe in Game Pass. So I do like that Tony Hawk Pro Skater is at least right there, front and center. Gives me hope for the future of that franchise. But they say here, today we officially welcome Activision Blizzard and their teams to Xbox. They are the publishers, some of the most played and most beloved franchises in gaming history across console, PC, and mobile. They do a little shout out here to Pitfall, and then obviously just start talking about Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, Overwatch, Candy Crush. Again, very, very popular games across all different kinds of devices. I think people tend to forget just how big something like Candy Crush is and how big King would be, especially for Microsoft, who continue to talk about the mobile space as being incredibly important for them and one of the key factors of this deal. So, it makes sense that they're at least putting Candy Crush even right there, front and center on that card, next to Tony Hawk, by the way. So, but interestingly enough, Phil Spencer also shouts out Guitar Hero. That's one that, a lot of questions around that, since it has come up multiple times. It kind of makes you think that Activision has actually been working on Call of Duty or on Guitar Hero this whole time, while they've basically spit out a Call of Duty every single year. Maybe somewhere in the background they've been trying to work out how they would revive Guitar Hero, and I'm more or less thinking of on the peripheral side, because that part, along with the licensing obviously, but the peripheral side, especially where we see more and more focus being pulled away from like these different plastic instruments and stuff, that would be tough. A lot of logistics around figuring that out. Phil Spencer goes on to say, together we'll create new worlds and stories, bring your favorite games to more places so more players can join in, and we'll engage with and delight players in new innovative ways in the places they love to play, including mobile, cloud streaming, and more. Whether you play on Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, PC, or mobile, you are welcome here and will remain welcome even if Xbox isn't where you play your favorite franchise. So we'll see how that statement holds up, especially 10 years from now when that Call of Duty deal with PlayStation runs up, and we'll see if they continue to support that. But now that this deal has been finalized, it's done, the CMA waved them through basically earlier, like overnight for me, and then earlier in the morning here, Microsoft put out the release, made everything official. We can kind of get a look here, and this was a kind of a diagram that was put up on Twitter or on X from Clobril, just sort of giving us an idea as to, how serious Microsoft's first-party studios, like their organization here, looks. It's substantial. It's to a point where, Microsoft could probably put out a big game or decently sized game, I'll say, every quarter. So, every 3 months, we should see something sizable come out. And you can also start to think about how maybe some of these intellectual properties can cross over to studios that might have a better idea as to how to handle it. I'm thinking of Banjo-Kazooie and Toys for Bob. That seems like it would make sense. Obviously, they do Crash Bandicoot, Spyro. I feel like they could probably tap into some of the old days, that kind of the feelings of Banjo-Kazooie, then bring it up to current times, and I think release an interesting product that would at least add more diversity to Game Pass, which is something that Microsoft is clearly trying to do. So it is interesting to think about that, but then on the other side, it's also something to consider when it comes to integration with Activision Blizzard King into Microsoft's first-party studios and being able to manage all of this. Sean Layden brought that up on X, that the acquisition, while of course there was a lot of work that went into it, it wasn't easy for Microsoft. The hard part would be the integration of Activision with their workflow and maybe what Microsoft wants to do even outside of Call of Duty, since it takes a ton of people to get Call of Duty out every single year, and obviously it's a big cash cow for Activision. So would they have that go to an every other year thing, or would they consider trying to put out Call of Duty consistently every single year while also having some of these other support studios maybe do other projects? Again, there's a lot of questions of how they're going to integrate that and what their plans are going forward. But obviously now that the deal is done, people are looking through Activision, Blizzard, King, their back catalog of intellectual properties and things that Microsoft could tap from the past and bring up now. And I started thinking a bit about their backwards compatibility team and how they've kind of moved on. But now would be a good time to pull them back and say, hey, there's a lot of stuff we can do now, and just start throwing those things into Game Pass. In that press release that Phil Spencer put out there, basically said, hey, we're getting to work on Game Pass entries right now. So I feel like in the next 2 to 3 weeks, we're going to start hearing about some of these Activision Blizzard games that will become available in Game Pass. And that could be a consistent thing over the next couple of years. Like, there are so many things they could pull from, to where every other month or so, you just see more and more Activision Blizzard games go in through backwards compatibility. So I think that would be paramount. You could consider the things like Quake 4, right? That could technically go in at this time, but then you could also get a little crazy with it. Maybe go get those Transformer games that I think would be awesome to bring into Game Pass to get kind of the online population back, make that online multiplayer work well, because they've gone back and done this with some of those previous Call of Duty games that, by the way, jumped up the sales charts. You get something like that. Maybe you call up Disney and talk about some of those older Spider-Man games that Activision developed and published. That would be interesting, wouldn't it? If all of a sudden Microsoft shows up and it's like, oh yeah, this month is a month of Spider-Man games from the old days, the Xbox 360 and the original Xbox, Spider-Man 2. I don't know how possible any of that is right now. It depends on where Disney is with, I guess, their Marvel licensing agreements. And again, I'm sure there's a lot of paperwork that they have to look through, but that would be something if they showed up with those kind of announcements, especially with how big Spider-Man is right now, really thanks to what's going on currently with Spider-Man 2 on the PlayStation 5. A lot of possibilities. But my biggest hope is that, you probably guess, Tony Hawk Pro Skater continues on, because 1 and 2, I think, was awesome. It ended up being the best selling in the entire franchise. Seems like the door is open for maybe Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 and 4 coming out, or maybe they go to Tony Hawk Pro Skater Underground and they do a new one in that series, or maybe just a brand new Tony Hawk Pro Skater in general. So it is interesting to keep in mind. A lot of possibilities here, but if anything, the deal's done. So we don't necessarily have to talk about any of the proceedings in court, any of the possibilities here that could hold the whole thing up. It's through. Now we just kind of look forward to see how things go when it comes to Microsoft and managing the wealth of intellectual properties and I'm sure the headaches that come along with getting Call of Duty out every single year. But let me know what you guys think about this one down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.